you probably already know that, but a few months ago, we launched the Pushing Against Racism commitment with more than 800 people have signed in so far. So this is amazing. Today, we have the Pushing Against Racism working group with us, including Sandy, the founder of Surf Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello. We also have Yash, the founder of Impact Skate Club in Canada. Hello. We also have Rhianon, the Goodpush Alliance Manager at Skateistan.
Hi.
Hello. And is Micaela here? No.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. Oh, there you go. Couldn't see you. So the founder of Poseiden Foundation in the US. Thank you. Apart from the working group, we also have 4 amazing guests with us. We are very honored to have them with us. So we have Karlie Thornton, the founder of Pro Skate in the US. Thank you, Karlie. We also have Dr. Neftalie Williams from the States. He's an academic and chair of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee for USA Skateboarding.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Also Dr. Indigo Willing, a sociologist, lecturer and community volunteer who's also the co-founder of Constant is Rad and We Skate Queensland. Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Greenwood, a Navajo artist, writer for APACHE skateboards and skate instructor in Southern California and Arizona, I think. Thank you. Thank you all very much for joining us. So should we talk about the commitment a bit? Talk about how it started, how did it come together, what was the reason behind it, and what are its objectives?
Sure, I can jump in on that one. So yeah, so kind of the way it came about was pretty organically. So last year during COVID, the Goodpush Alliance, which is like a knowledge sharing network for social skate projects, we decided to host some webinars to just bring together the social skate community, firstly talking about COVID, but then it ended up kind of morphing to talk about other topics and current things that were happening. And so we ended up, after everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter in the US and around the world, we had a couple sessions or webinars on anti-racism action in social skateboarding. And we had a lot of different social skate projects there. And yeah, many of the people that are here today were there, including Sandy, who was, very adamant, like we need to just not just talk and do something. And so, yeah, it was suggested that we should put together some kind of a commitment that we could kind of use to guide action for the future. And about a dozen organizations, mostly social skate organizations, but also a couple skate companies said, hey, we'll be a part of a working group and we can do this together. And so pretty much over like several months, we worked on the commitment and the ideas behind it, the resources, and yeah, and then put it out there. And I guess like to talk a little bit about like why we thought it was important when we were doing these webinars, we were just, discussing like that skateboarding is not, it's part of society and racism exists across all of society. So, it's in our personal interactions, it's in the skate parks, but it's also like in the organization and larger society that we're in. So we really wanted to look at how we could put together something to like raise awareness of this and yeah, have people talking about things like how there's maybe not as diverse representation as there should be within organizations, also within media coverage, and yeah, and also that a lot of people have not felt as welcome as some people like to think skateboarding can be. So yeah, just like microaggressions and stereotyping and stuff that can happen in skating. So the basic objective of the commitment was just to create an anti-racist culture in the skate community worldwide, and it's something that people sign on to, but it's just like the starting point, and we realize that it's like a very long-term mission that we've kind of launched with Pushing Against Racism. So that's the basic idea behind it.
Thank you so much. Why would you say, why was it important to open the commitment up beyond social skating to the wider skate industry and the skate community as well?
Yeah, I would love to contribute on that question. When we started the initiative, what it was really important is to also recognize that we need to educate, that skate community together. As a Black person, I can definitely share my experience to everybody every day, but we need also people to listen, So I think what it was important for us is to have at the table every stakeholder, so skate shop, skate park, skate coach, a manager of a founder of organization, social project, etc., but also marketing director, of brands. And everybody at the table can definitely think and be more open, because we have a conversation that involves everybody. And I think it's just, we open that to different perspectives. And I think what was really important is to create also or build a supportive environment. And I think to build that, we needed to have everybody at the table. And I think it's important for us to learn, and to learn, we need to share experience, and we need to talk about education first, because a lot of people are not aware about racism in general. When, for example, for us, it's a routine, it's every day, and we are not aware. And I think for us, it was also to highlight and explain what's happening right now and how we can develop, a conversation that can really help the community to grow together and have a better environment for skateboarding and minority in general, and make it more inclusive.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I wanted to ask, what was the people's response to that? It's been about 4 months or so, and I know that more than 800 people have signed it so far. But yeah, was it better than you expected or worse than you expected? How was it? How has it been?
I can say a little bit, and if anyone else wants to jump in, they can. I think something that was, when we were talking about launching it, before we launched it, we kind of made a point of not setting any goal in terms of like the number of signatories. That was something really important, was that it shouldn't be about numbers or this kind of thing. It's just about having people just really like authentically decide to reflect and then take action in their own lives. So that said, I think we were surprised with how well received it was. So especially like the day we launched on May 25th, it was the first year anniversary of George Floyd's death, and we had like a lot of people in the skateboarding community were sharing it and having conversations. And I think within that first day, more than 700 people signed on, and it was really great because we also saw a lot of organizations represented. So I think now almost 300 different organizations. So that means skate projects, skate shops, brands, media organizations, and we have a handful also of like Olympic national governing bodies. They've signed on. So I think like to see the people getting it and wanting to be a part of it across the whole kind of skateboarding world was really amazing. Of course, there was like the occasional people who, I don't know, didn't get it or were really adamant that skateboarding doesn't exist, or sorry, racism doesn't exist in skateboarding. But that was really just like a very small minority compared to how many people were really positively sharing it. So I think it really resonated with a lot of people.
Cool. So you mentioned that some people were a bit skeptical about it, but basically this is part of why you started the commitment as well, just to make sure everyone understands what's going on and that, racism does exist in skateboarding. Why is it important to sign the commitment, and what does it mean when someone does that?
I don't know if Micaela is here. Micaela, you want to cover that one?
Hi, sorry, I had sent a direct message. My mom's driving my daughter right now to school. So could you please ask the question again and I can go ahead and answer?
Yeah, of course. Basically, I'm wondering, why is it important to sign the commitment, and what does it mean when someone signs it?
What it means to sign the commitment means that you're actually making a conscious decision to understand that racism, one, does exist, and two, that you are going to do your best job to eliminate it, not only from your thought and process, and become aware of what you may be doing to others or within society that may be considered racist as well. And that's what's really great about this working commitment is with anti-racism, is that we continue to discover that not only within the United States, but culturally outside of the United States, depending on the demographic and socioeconomic background with people, just in general, there could be different people targeted in different countries. For instance, with Black Lives Matter is the reason why we started the anti-racism commitment. But then as going in the working group and working with others, we began to discover there's more racism than just Black Lives Matter. For instance, in Southern California, Latinos a lot of the time are targeted with racism, depending on where you are. So happy to have Dior here, because then there's the First Nations with what's happening. And Sandy from Africa, I mean, she has given us a plethora of information on what happens there within racism. And as you begin to see, whoa, maybe I was saying something that wasn't politically or diplomatically or even socially correct, you begin to change your mindset. And that's what is so important about this anti-racism commitment. It's not about just stomping out racism. It's about becoming aware of what you're doing, and not just using people of color as a token to say, hey, we're diverse, or hey, we believe that we're not racist, but really taking a time to look in within yourself on what you can do to stop this, not only within skateboarding, because it's very apparent that this happens within skateboarding, but not within your own social interactions as well. And by signing the commitment, that's what you're doing. And can you tell me the second question? Or did I?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you. I just didn't hear the last bit. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So with the anti-racism commitment, that's basically what you're doing is you are signing a commitment to say that you are constantly making that decision to change not only your mindset, but the mindset of society around you. And that's why I find the commitment so important to be a part of.
Thank you so much, Micaela. I wanted to ask also about the commitment. I mean, I know, Rhianon, you said that at first you didn't really have any goals about numbers and stuff, but now that you kind of know where it's gone, how far do you see this commitment going, and how can it be built on?
I'll hop in here. This is kind of more of a personal answer, and my role in the commitment and my reasons for being a part of it are personal as well. Just like my own lived experience, as I'm sure it is for everyone. But growing up skateboarding, this is stuff that wasn't talked about and that I didn't even really consider too closely. Oh, geez. But my goals personally, my hope is that, first of all, that we invite conversations among, white people, among each other, as well as people of color, and all of those intersections, because, all different types of people hang out at the skate park. And just because, like we all know, just because you have Black friends or friends of color, that doesn't exempt you from being culturally insensitive or even ignorant or even like full on hatefully racist. But this is kind of like, I'm hoping that it opens the door to talk about our own skate experiences within our communities, which, like I said, I never really had an opportunity to do or even the thought to do. But it involves like perhaps changing or unlearning some of the assumptions that we grew up with or that are ingrained by, you know, our society at large and even from skate culture. So the first part is the conversation bit, and it takes a degree of willingness and like acknowledgement of there actually being a problem. And beyond that, and this is where I might differ from other people in the commitment, but what's really most important to me is like the personal reflection and the personal growth. Because none of this can happen without some degree of humility in, you know, it's not about calling people out or just like changing the outward behavior, but really like digging inside to where our maybe harmful beliefs may have come from in the first place and how they're reinforced, and, you know, potentially like facing problematic people in our lives or problematic experiences we've had and digging in and seeing them for what they are and how they might have influenced us. And when I say us, I mean me, because, you know, growing up, I experienced all kinds of racism from my friends and like racial jokes and discrimination. And I always kind of felt in a way like less than, or, you know, kind of inferior because I wasn't one of them. Although at the time I kind of just maybe brushed it off as like, it's just fun. We all kind of tease each other. And I kind of just chalked it up to a part of the teasing, or like the, you know, the stuff that friends will do with each other and kind of like rip on each other. Something that kind of stuck with me was from the Pushing Borders Summit a couple of years ago, where there was a pro skater being interviewed, and where the conversation was around racism, and his opinion or his experience was that racism was not a problem for him unless he just thought of everything as being racist. And to me, that seemed like kind of where I was a few years back, where I didn't see the racism around me as being racist. I kind of just brushed it off. But by not acknowledging it, it didn't change anything. And I could see how those same people would talk about others around me. Like, even, you know, I'm not Black, but I am a person of color, and my white friends would be really comfortable saying the N-word around me, but not around Black people. So I started more recently looking at like, what does that say about me that they felt comfortable enough to say that around me? And, you know, less what it says about them. So how, you know, part of this commitment and part of having this discussion is like, how do we admit that we might have had things wrong, even if it, and that even goes for, you know, me or other people of color. But mostly my intention with this, and what I hope we get out of it long term, is to create like a safe, welcoming space where people can just come in where they're at and be able to learn and grow together in good faith.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story as well. And I think it's really important to, well, first of all, you know, sign into the commitment and hear all the stories and understand things. So yeah, we're going to talk about some stories later on. I just wanted to ask one last question at the working group, whether you saw any changes after the commitment was launched, whether that is from, you know, the skate industry, the brands, the organizations, just anyone.
Can I say something? I'm not in the working group. Am I? I am.
You are a special guest.
I completely forgot I'm in the working group.
You are.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mbali, and I am the MER manager at Skateistan. And Skateistan went through a period, I think sometime last year, late last year or early this year, I can't remember clearly, but we went through a period of self-reflection as an organization where we were trying to understand ourselves, and as an organization that is quite a big organization, it's quite a well-known organization. But if you look at our staffing profile, you kind of wonder, that's kind of suspicious. Like, everybody in a director position is white, everybody, you know, and it was one of those kind of conversations that we started to have internally. And then when the the commitment came along, it was a lot easier for Skateistan to sign up to that commitment, because we had already had conversations internally about how we are as an organization. How do we work in areas of conflict? How do we work in areas where we understand the demographics are of people who are previously disadvantaged, people who are Black, people who are historically poor, and yet the team that leads this organization is mostly made up of white people. And these are real conversations that we had to have and unpack. And one of the things that we started to realize was, through our hiring process, how were we filtering for whiteness, or how were we filtering for privilege? And it's such a small thing that you don't really think about when you're on the hiring committee and you're like, yeah, we want a master's and we want experience and we want this and we want this. And then you start to realize, if you have conversations with your colleagues, that actually you're screening for a specific kind of person by asking for all of these things. And what you're screening for is people that look like you. So you're not necessarily opening up the playing field to everyone, because I'm Bali, I don't have a master's, but I've been working in the NGO sector for almost 6 or 7 years, and I know what I'm talking about and I have the experience. But I don't qualify for this position, and neither will a lot of Black folks who don't have the masters but have put in those hours and have put in the time. They've run the sessions, they've met the kids, they know what the kids need. So these are the things that we started to sort of talk about as an organization. And I'm really appreciative of working for an organization that actually started to unpack those things and really look inside and say, okay, what can we do? Because we don't want to just pay lip service to signing onto a commitment. We don't want to do it just because it looks nice or there's a great logo. We have to do it because it means something. And I really think we're taking major steps in the right direction.
Thanks a lot for jumping in.
I also wanted to jump in and say that it's been really amazing since we started the working group with anti-racism commitment, in the sense of, you know, all the NGBs that are hopping on board and also wanting to be a part of this movement. And just in case people don't know what NGB means, the national governing body for countries within the Olympics that are supporting skateboarding as a sport. And it's really, really important that all these different people come into play whenever we're talking about anti-racism, because it comes from the level up and from the level down up, you know? So hitting every angle of the skate industry to make sure that there's that awareness that this is actually happening, and to know that there's a group that's really behind this commitment. And when you sign it, it's an obligation in a way. You know, you're making the commitment to be part of this. And that's one of the biggest movements I've seen, is that the NGBs, including USA Skateboarding, the Brazilian NGB, and others as well from Europe, that have come on board, as well as skateboard companies that weren't even aware that this was happening within their own industry. Because unless you feel it, and unless you understand it, and unless you've experienced it, do you really understand what people of color that are experiencing racism, not only in society, but within skateboarding, actually feel and have existed? Like Yash has explained his personal stories within skateboarding. I can personally relate with that very, very dearly, not only being a female, a person of color, Latina, and I mean, being a female in general in skateboarding, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we other females can also relate to. So thank you. It's been so amazing. And to get more organizations on board to signing the commitment, also getting more NGBs on board to signing the commitment, and understanding the importance of this working group, I feel is going to really make a big difference within culture. Because if you really start to think about it, racism is a form of abuse. It's a form of treating someone differently than how you would treat yourself. And so with understanding that, I think it's really, really important. And thank you for your time and everything.
Thanks so much, Micaela, as well. Unless someone else wants to mention anything else about the commitment, I would like to continue to the interviews. Sandy, yes, please.
Yes, I would like just to say that for the past 6 months, I was really, really happy to see the effort of brands and marketing director to involve people of color in their strategy. Some people is going to say that it's trendy and something, but I just wanted to say that we need to start somewhere, okay? So I was really happy that a lot of brands started the movement in US. But it's not only about skateboarders, actually. I like the idea that for me, the skateboarding community is skate shop. So there is a lot of brands now who are available in skate shop, you know, like Waffle and Cream, for example, from Nigeria. Now they are, we can find them in London, in France, and other countries, even in Japan. And I think that's really beautiful. The same way that, for example, Facebook came to Ghana to do their official commercial, and they involve only skateboarders from Ghana. That was huge for us, but also for the skateboarding community in Africa. So there is a good move, really, and I'm really proud to say that that's conversation. Actually, we just start a conversation with them, but it's not only with the brand; it's also marketing director, agency, creative agency. You know, different profile, and I'm so happy to see people who are able to document all this community, you know. And I feel like improving the skateboarding community is not only skateboarders practicing, it's journalists, it's blogger, it's like marketing director, it's coach, it's manager of skate park, etc. And I feel like for the past 6 months there is a big move, and I'm really happy to see that. I'm not going to say it's only because of this commitment, but this commitment, at least for people who sign, it launched a conversation, a really positive conversation to say, okay, let's sit and let's talk about what we can do. I'm definitely a doer on my side, and I would like also to say that this commitment, for me, the consequences, the good consequences of this commitment is to work on the ground. So at the moment, with Goodpush, we're working hard really to create the first ground actually for the BIPOC community. You know, I think it's really new, and we don't know how it's gonna work, but be sure that I'm working personally on that to be able to deliver a support, a financial support to help photographer, filmmaker, skateboarder, any organization in the skate culture who needs support. So for us, it's a big move also because it showed that, okay, we have a problem and we try to find a solution. And I think this is really the most important thing to do right now. Think about what we can do to improve the skate community in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right, I would like to move on to the interviews. So, Karlie, I think you're here. Yeah, you're here. Can we talk about throw skate and maybe explain what throw skate is and, you know, a few words about that?
Yeah, of course. Hey, everyone. Yeah, so Throw Skate is a skate collective based in Chicago. We founded in 2019 to make a community and just have a safe space for BIPOC skaters, especially those on the femme, trans, non-gender conforming, and queer spectrum. We really started naturally, kind of like Rhianon mentioned earlier. There was just such a need in the community for a space for people who looked like us to actually feel comfortable and to feel seen in the skate community. So we're actually the first skate collective in Chicago to actually serve our community, especially within the BIPOC community as well. So yeah, in existing over 2.5 years, we've done over 70 events. That's including like our regular meetups that happen bi-weekly now. We've done different events like workshops and social initiatives, from fundraisers to, you know, protests to food drives as well. So yeah, we're really active in the community, and we just want to create a safe space for skaters like us.
Amazing. How important would you say, well, actually, how has it been helpful for people? Because you said that you started quite naturally because there was a need of such community. So it started quite naturally, and then like there's so many of you now, there's so many members and so many, you know, people who come to your meetups. So how has it been helpful for people, and what has their response been generally?
It's been really helpful. When we first started Skate, if you go to a skate park, just in general, it's going to be so rare that you'll see another girl, especially like another Black woman or someone that's queer or trans at the skate park. It's like you pull up and you see someone who looks like you, you're like, what? And I think we all know what it feels like to be in a room with people who look nothing like you and share no common similarities to you. You just feel uncomfortable, you feel singled out, you feel intimidated, and also everyone is staring at you because you're like the odd one out. So for Skate to exist, to actually create that space of community for people, it's like, no, now we're the majority of the skate park. Now we're taking up space, and this is how we're coexisting together. And it's just been so awesome because people have now found more courage to go to the skate park, you know, with their friends or especially by themselves. Because, you know, we have these events at skate parks on regular days. So now we're not only like showing up as a collective, but we're also meeting the regular skaters at those skate parks. And so now we're just like getting to know each other and just being more comfortable being in a community together and just creating total inclusion. So it's been awesome. You know, like now you go to a skate park and you're definitely going to see a woman, you're definitely going to see someone who's queer and someone who looks like you. So, or maybe you won't, but you can invite someone. Now you know who to invite. So yeah, it's been great. We've grown a lot over the past 2.5 years, from like 2 to 3 members to like now every meetup we have like at least 30 people who show up. So it's been great.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Like actually when someone starts skating, especially when they're a beginner, you know, it's so hard to just put yourself out there. And you know, if you don't know people, then you're sort of very shy and you don't want to go skate, even though that's literally what you want to do. So it's very important to have such like a community and, you know, people who are doing the same thing as you are. So yeah, I think it's very important to have those safe spaces. But can you talk to me about, you know, how important would you say that safe spaces are in our community and for everyone who skates?
They're very important. Kind of just like I mentioned before, like when you feel more comfortable to be yourself and to be who you fully are and to bring your full, complete self into a space, you're able to just do so many more amazing things. You feel more comfortable to take risks. You feel supported, you feel held when you're around your community. So it's really important that those spaces are created. Skate, when we first started, I didn't know about like any of the other organizations that existed or any of the other skaters that were out there, like Skate Like a Girl, we love them so much, or Brianna King. We just started because there was nothing like that happening and people really wanted it to happen. But, you know, I have a background working with BIPOC, with the BIPOC queer community, especially with Black femme queer community with Party Noir. So for me, starting Skate wasn't just about creating a space for the femme and queer community, it was about creating a space for the BIPOC community as well. Because in skateboarding, it's probably a little bit different nowadays, but back then it's still very white, you know, and just like the image of it to this day is still very white. So I really wanted to create a space where Black, Indigenous, and people of color could see each other, be the majority in a space where they're typically viewed as the minority. And yeah, you just feel more comfortable there.
Yeah, I think it's so important how you, I mean, I've been following you guys for quite a while, and it's so important and beautiful what you're doing. So
Thank
well
you.
done. I wanted to ask you, because I know you're doing some other stuff apart from the skate meetups, but what else do you do for the community?
Yeah, so we really wanted to make it a point that it's so much more than just a meetup. Skateboarding can incite so much change, and it has incited so much change in each of us individually. We all as skaters do so much more beyond skating. Like, we're all artists. Some of us are activists. Some of us are, you know, professional, or some of us work in advertising. I work in advertising. So we've all been able to kind of just like put our skills together and figure out ways that we can touch just the world beyond skateboarding, and also figure out ways where we can be community and just create a deeper friendship with each other beyond the meetup. So we've done things like we've had fundraisers for different organizations in the city, like Black Abolitionist Network, or, you know, Brave Space Alliance, which is a center for the trans community here in Chicago. And we've also hosted food drives. So last year, when the Black Lives Matter movement kind of restarted, we were able to just use our platform, which was growing, to actually help serve the community and serve a need beyond skateboarding, because it's still a story that touches many of us and many of our lives and many of our communities. So, you know, we wanted to bring food and supplies to areas where their Walgreens and, you know, their grocery stores were being closed because of rioting and protests. And these people needed groceries, they needed things for their children. So we were able to support that last year. And through this year, we've been able to support other organizations who are doing that work, and we go and volunteer with them sometimes as well. And then we also held a protest last year called No Breaks, which was a protest to raise awareness towards how we want to defund the police here in Chicago, and also just raising more awareness on the defense of Black trans lives and Black lives as well. We included skateboarders, bikers, roller skaters, and like thousands of people showed up for us. It was so wild to see, because we did not expect that to happen. And people kept telling us like it was the most organized protest they've ever been to. But, you know, when we were in it, we were really just focused on making sure that everyone was going to be safe, ensure that we're communicating what we need to communicate. But everyone really felt the same way about what we were trying to raise awareness about. And we had a platform, so we decided to use it. And yeah, so a lot of stuff happened last year when we couldn't have regular meetups. We wanted to be involved in the community and still use our platform for good.
That's amazing. I love that. And it was sort of, I wanted to ask you about how did you survive in the pandemic, because obviously with the meetups and stuff, it wasn't that easy to just, you know, go out in groups, right? Yeah. But you were doing other stuff.
Yeah,
so I think that's right.
Barely survived. It was so hard, and it still is. We're still recovering. I mean, we're still in a pandemic, you know, and we're still trying to figure out ways that we can involve the community safely. And last year, without our meetups, we held really large events, and so we got kind of burnt out from doing all of that programming. And so this year we've kind of been able to just like turn it back and just refocus on the meetup, which is our main thing. But yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Thank you. And I have one more question for you. What do you think needs to be done in the skate community in order to be more inclusive?
Yeah, I guess I would kind of like separate this into two buckets. The first bucket is like on the ground, like, you know, in the skateboarding community, people who skate together. I would say it's awesome if, you know, traditional skaters would invite non-traditional skaters to their sessions, to their filming sessions, and just like make us feel included in what you're doing. We can have our meetups, have our safe spaces once a week, once a month or whatever, but what really matters is we're trying to do this so that our skaters are included in the regular skate scene, in the regular skate world. So if we could actually be invited into your spaces and make a real community where we're actually all totally together is like my true goal. Yeah, inclusivity is definitely like the true goal here. So if you could actually just invite us be our friends, chill with us, encourage us at the skate park, which a lot of skaters still do. I think that that would help us moving forward. And then I guess the next bucket is like the skate industry. So I would say like to really just support the organizations that are doing the work, like Skate, like Surf Ghana, you know, like Skateism as well. I'm kind of tired of asking for like a seat at the table because it's 2021, you know, if you don't have Black and brown people in your leadership team by now, and why am I begging? You know, like we've decided to create our own lanes. We've decided to create our own organizations, our own magazines, our own platforms, because we're not being invited into these spaces that are already existing. So now I look to the industry and I say, we need not only just help funding what we're trying to do, but also the advice and the wisdom that you have from running these large companies, these large organizations, to help us get our mission and our statement and our goals off the ground. And longevity as well is like, we need more longevity in our community because we don't know what we're doing, but we do know that we want to serve our community, and we know how to do community work, and we know how to speak to, you know, Gen Zers, millennials, BIPOC people, Indigenous people, but your company is lacking in that. So let's just help each other, you know, and just uplift each other, and invite us to work for your companies, invite us to work in your skate shops. I just want inclusivity across the board.
Thank you so much. That is very important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we move to Neftalie, Dr. Neftalie Williams? Can you tell us a little bit about you and your work? I mean, you're doing so much stuff. So yeah, can you talk to us about it?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been on. It's really just sort of just a joy to hear these stories, and the initiative being put out there in the first place, because like I've been in skateboarding for a long time, and like even understanding that, you know, knowing that the initiative gave people a space to sign on to and a space to start the discussion. So I really applaud that, and I actually think I'm having a lot of feelings because everyone just did so great. So I apologize if it takes me a second, but just looking to what Sandy was saying, and in Bali in particular, I just you know, they kind of said it best, like, you know, it's education first, right? So that was their earlier statements, and for me it really means a lot, because that is the purpose of me being in academia. So first of all, you know, I'm an African-American male from the US, and there are very few Black scholars, right? So there are not as many skaters of color or Black skaters, but there are very solidly few academics of color, which I'm sure India will talk about as well. But so for me, I'm sorry, I got a little excited to hear of all the work and the things that are going on. And I actually go back to when everyone's talking about their original organizations. I think back to like the first thing I focused on when I started skating was we built a skateboarding camp for kids. And I don't really talk about that often, but like that's what we did. And I lucked out that I grew up skating with women and lots of skaters of color and white skaters. So my particular time, and I got to come up and see all of this. It wasn't like a dream of something. It's like, it was literally there. I saw that. I knew what we looked like. I know what we look like being together because I've been in that space before. And I know what it looks like when we're apart. And so I've sort of carried that through all of my work. And so the quick version is, I'm an academic. I researched race and racial politics of skateboarding culture at the University of Southern California. I'm also at Yale as the Yale Schwarzman Center's new visiting fellow for race, culture, and community. And all of those things are just kind of, the focus is to make change within the institutions that produce knowledge, right? I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Like, we have different ways in which to conquer and create change. When I looked at where the scholarship on who skaters were and their place and role within skateboarding culture, I saw that we weren't there. And that was not the experience I had. I grew up looking at Black skaters and skaters of color, you know, since I was 15 years old. So So I know that we've been there. To actually go to academia and be researching, I was working on skateboarding as a tool for cultural diplomacy, which is a whole nother thing. But what I saw was that we didn't have any history. And that is a real thing, like even just thinking through like the skaters of color that are on this, that are watching this, when we don't have a history in academia, then it makes it harder for us to argue and fight for resources that should be ours. Because people can just say like, well, you just started yesterday, or you've only been here for a minute, so you don't have a history. And it's very important to be able to plant that history and show that skaters of color, male, female, and gender non-binary, people have been there since the beginning. So my research is really focused by looking at skaters of color from the 1960s to the present day. And that was my PhD dissertation, which will be a new book now. But really taking that and giving us a home in academia. And then I also, as a few people know, I teach at the University of Southern California as well. And I taught like first class skateboarding and action sports and business, media, and culture. And so what that did was allowed, I mean, truthfully, everyone on this call or this Zoom could be able to take that class, you know, if you were at USC, of course, but to be able to see yourself reflected by not just a Black scholar or a scholar of color, but seeing somebody who is a skateboarder, who has lived a skateboarding experience. And the truth is, as we all have varying ways and degrees of power that we have, right? And so to be in the academy, to be able to see somebody who may come from the, you know, the same streets as you came from, might have the same issues with parents or substance abuse, or just recognizing that all skateboarders are marginalized, all of us, right? That's actually what we have as a connective tissue, is that we are marginalized against the larger populace, right? So we don't see ourselves on ESPN. We don't see ourselves on the nightly news. We don't see ourselves in general. So for me, it's connecting the dots and knowing who we all are, and seeing like even greater than our individual struggle is that actually we're not seen anywhere, and these people are really in control. It's not even a fight against skateboarding, internal struggle. That's like, I always say that's like that's inside things. Those are things we can conquer because we've already done that. We already have examples. And anytime we're not doing that, we're not being skateboarders. So that's real easy, right? That's why you make a history. And part of making that history, instead of just being in the academy and like, sure, you make journals or you teach classes or you do that, that's great, because first of all, it's good for everybody's parents, right, to see that you exist and that this time that you're spending skateboarding like can have something else somewhere else, right, in places that also matter, even though all of it does. Sometimes we got to get them, sometimes we got to be there, right? We have to do that, have those deans that back it so your parents can let those things slide, and so that our children will have a place already, right? So I mean, sorry, that was a little long, but that's really what I've focused on, is making that space. And I work with the skate park project as well, you know, College Skateboarding Educational Foundation. So I work with CSEF, with Cuba Skate. I've worked with them before, but just to have us live, and of course in Skateistan, to have us live in a number of spaces, to put that history, because if we don't have that, then we're kind of fighting with one arm tied behind our back. And what we do is special. And it's unlike anything else that's occurred. And so I'm just trying to let those people know, and then like keep those doors open so everybody can like, so I can slide everybody else into. So.
Thank you. I can see everyone smiling and nodding while you were talking. So I think that we can all agree and resonate with that, what were you saying?
Sorry if that was a lot in one thing.
Oh no, not even. I was wondering, because I know you've been in the game for quite like a long time, and you know, you've done so many things, so many amazing things. So I wanted to ask you if you have noticed any changes in regards to how people treat each other in the community, in the skate community, since you started skating.
Yes, what I think is, you know, it's kind of indicative of just the larger culture, and I guess that's the advantage of having been seen a lot for a long time, is like even just like the sort of microaggressions that would happen because people didn't recognize that there were microaggressions, or as I believe it was Yash said earlier, like understanding like if you're a Black body in white space, then you are in general probably deal with something, because people are not aware that they might be saying something racist, or that they might be saying something that's discriminatory, or they might be saying something that's sexist or homophobic. Like those things have been present. And so what I see now, particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement, if we're talking about race, is that brought that conversation out, and it gave people the space to be able to say like, hey, you've been doing that. You're a friend of mine, and I've known you for 10 years or 20 years, and you've been doing that the whole time. And it's not cool. And so that's like, so when we say where the change is it's allowed people to have feelings. And before, you were not allowed to have feelings really. And it was also, I will tell you, so when I started the PhD, as I was saying, I interviewed 50 different skaters of color from 1960 to now, right? And everyone that I was working with, particularly those who are not like, let's say those who are not under 18, those older skaters had said, it's really hard to talk about race because you're kind of in a space like skateboarding is like not only giving you so much, and this isn't just like in careers and like money, but it's like giving you the space to have a freedom and to have friends who are from different backgrounds and to like explore and grow who you are as a person. So it's hard to, it's truthfully, so it can be hard to critique. But what was special was being able to work with all these skaters of color and being a skater of color myself, right? And having worked in the skateboarding industry as a photographer, writer, to like be able to say, I see you and I know. So we had a shorthand, right? To be able to go, it's okay to like say those things that might have hurt, but more importantly than the things that hurt, it's actually the space to be able to see. What I focus on is going, where were the allyships? That's we're at the Olympics this year, right? That didn't occur because of one person. That occurred because there were allyships across the globe in so many deep ways. And that's the stuff that I'm writing about. Those are like, that's the focus, because skateboarding has something that's beautiful in it. It gave us the opportunity to want to be together. And there aren't any other, there's no other spot. Nobody wanted to do things before. When I started skating, none of our parents wanted us to skate, like, which we all know, no one wants to skate, but it wasn't because of skateboarding. They didn't want us to skate because they didn't want, they're like, hey, why are you hanging out with the Puerto Rican kid? Why are you hanging out with this Asian kid? Why are you going skating with this black girl or this white girl? Like, what is this weird thing you're doing? And so like, I got to see what it was like for parents to hate that and to see that we were bonded in our marginalization, right? Like going, I don't know why they don't want us to be together. You want to skate, I want to skate. Like, let's just hide out and go skate, right? So I have that. And when I have that as a history and I look at where we are right now, even just having this conversation, no, we've made a lot of progress, but we had to have that pain. Unfortunately, it's the murder of George Floyd that made it be that everybody had to stop everywhere. But that made everything change. It made everything change. I'm having those discussions in the academy, and even with people who begrudgingly are having the conversation, it's very difficult for them. But what I get to say for skateboarding is that we've been doing this. The fact that we have this conversation and it's not some crazy hierarchy, we have this conversation because we're individuals who care. And that's what's special about skateboarding. Like, we do care. And it's not the same. As much as I love all the other action sports, I do the research on those spaces. They're not having the same organic lives and conditions and conversations that we have in skateboarding. So that's all I try to do. So yes, the protests help. No, it's not a phase. We're all moving along. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Very powerful. So you kind of covered the next question, so I'm going to go over on the next one. So that's something we have previously talked about. But you're someone who has lived in the States, you've lived in Europe, in Netherlands, you were in New Zealand as well. So, so many different places. Have you noticed if racism works differently in different parts of the world? And if so, how?
Yeah, very much so. And that was really, just to everyone, the focus of us doing, I don't have it right here, but the focus of us doing the issue of skateism. Go ahead and grab it, because we got to put Samaria Brevity got to put our sister on the cover. You need to see Black women on the cover of skateboarding magazines. Yes. So, part of the advantage of having seen and lived in a bunch of different places is that no one owns this conversation. No one owns this conversation about race and racism. And so it's really important to just have a nuanced discussion. Like Mbali said, the way that it operates in South Africa is different than it operates in Afghanistan, the way that it might operate differently as India will tell you, as Indigo will tell you, in Australia and in New Zealand. And so part of us being good to each other is to actually say like we have our personal experience, but context matters. And I'm always trying to pull that out. What the way we look at race and racism, I mean, in particular, like we did that with Skateism, right? Well, I'll leave that alone, but we did that with Skateism to have a conversation that was not just US centric, right? And that's just the truth. Like we have these deep discussions about race and racism, but race and racism in the US is not the same as in the UK and the EU and different places. And we have a lot to learn from each other. And that focus of that magazine was to have conversations about skateboarding and race and racial politics, not just racism, but like how these things are lived in South Africa, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in the US. So we had a broad understanding of how things operate. And there really is a lot, there's a lot to learn from each other. There is strength in those numbers, and really just kind of not taking everything as personally sometimes. So when you get to see that we all have a level of privilege in all the countries and all the ways, like to go to New Zealand, I'll just stop it there, but to go to New Zealand and see the Maori and understand that, you know, signing the Treaty of Waitangi, and to know that there were people of color who fought the Brits to a standstill, you know, to fight the European influence, that shit put tears in my eyes. Because to be an African-American person and to like not have that space of like, now, do not get me wrong, I understand that the Crown could have, like, they were like, hey, we're not gonna fight, this place is too far, there's too much, like there's all that context, sure. But to be a person of color from the US and go and say like, yo, they fought them to a standstill. In the US, we are American when you're African-American. So like you have a different relationship to race and racism that's wholly American. And it's nice to go to Europe and see like those relationships are different. And what things are colonialism, what things are imperialism. It just helps to have all those conversations. And I risk, if there's anything, I hope everyone can understand, like we only have like a slight moment, and those moments are perfect, and they're all little fires. But if we really engage globally, that's when we can really make the change that skateboarding is capable of doing. That's all I got, Denia.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about everything, but I'll have to move on to Indigo. Hello, where are you? Oh yes, hi. So could you please tell us a little bit about you and your work? You're also an academic, so why did you decide to also research skateboarding?
Okay, thank you, Denia, so much. And it's such an honor to hear all the other speakers. Everybody sort of said things that I think we can all relate to, and the work of Neftalie I've been sort of, really keen to hear about, and what it's like in academia in the United States, because it's pretty racist where I'm from over here, and it's really important us to be in the academy. And we've exchanged a few times, and I've just sort of said, it's really good to see us on the shelves. These sort of things, when somebody goes to study skateboarding, whose history are they looking at? Who's writing it? Who's represented there? And we need more of us. So it's really good that, Neftalie also emphasizes opening up that door. And it's not about having a seat at the table. It's almost like, just burn the table and, build a nicer one, build one that's outside, have a picnic rug. Okay, so I am based on the land of the Yugambeh, Jaeger and Turrbal people in Mianjin, Brisbane. I am the co-founder of a group called Consent is Rad. It started with my friends, Millie Miljavec, Tora Waldron, Evie Ryder, and others that support us. I think one of my other buds, Brooks here. And we launched it in Pushing Borders in Malmo in 2019, before the pandemic, before bushfires, before at the moment there's some sort of, white supremacist riots down in Melbourne, and there's been an earthquake. Before all that, we're at Pushing Borders, we had some, conversations. The team there in Skateism and Skatepub were just very generous when I came with them with the idea and said, can we get skateboarders to, not pose, but get photographed of a sign saying consent is rad, just to sort of get the idea of consent as a normalized conversation in skateboarding. And, if I went to, say, one of the sort of more macho skate shops, or at the time, maybe one of the more macho skate media, they might feel like it might alienate their main audience. But Pushing Borders was very much into open conversations, and very much like this summit by the Goodpush, trying to look at the social side of skateboarding. And they said, yeah, we'll support this. And so it was really great because there are a lot of sort of well-known skateboarders there as well. And sort of as ambassadors, getting those photos taken drew attention to the campaign in ways it wouldn't have if it was just me and my homies, my friends, just in, a small town in Brisbane in Australia, in a very tight-knit community where we're putting ourselves at risk, kind of having those conversations. When it's international and it's all sorts of skateboarders doing this with you, it takes the load off and it's shared, right, the experience. So that was when Consent is Rad sort of was introduced. And since then, we've been pretty lucky that, we've only had like a small amount of trolls and people sort of, backlash. And for the most part, we've had people in skate groups like, all different ones that you can think of here. And I know Bear from Cornerstone here, Doyen, City of Skate. There's just so many Melanin Girls and Pals. There's so many groups here that have given us advice on how to sort of navigate certain things. And also as a woman of color, sort of ways to think about the racism within skateboarding as intersecting with things like consent. So yeah, primarily that's what I'm here to talk about. And my research is basically very, very similar to what it's doing. And it's a book with Anthony Pappalardo. We've seen sort of calling out culture where you call out people and you this idea of cancelling people, but we know that those people don't get cancelled. They're there the next day, So then we're looking at, the call-in culture where you call people in, but in some ways that's also just saying, hey, look at us, we're great, or something like, so we're trying to look at solutions-based culture complementing that call-in culture. Like, these are the people as examples and these are the case studies. And so, yeah, there's so much to learn from Neftalie's work as well as, Karlie's work and Yash's and Sandy's and, what you're doing with Skateism and, Poseiden as well. So really trying to think about solutions-based, but also within those intersections. So we know that things like Black Lives Matter are very important when it comes to, well, what do we do when somebody is accused of things like, just a trigger warning if we talk about the themes of consent, what happens when somebody is behaving in a way that's, assault or abuse? Calling the police, looking at sort of, carceral solutions is going very much against Black Lives Matter. It's putting people of color at more risk. A lot of people of color, a lot of trans, queer people, it's not going to make them safer doing that. So really drawing on maybe some of the work that Karlie was talking about as well, like just trying to learn from, the Black Lives Matter movement and people that are doing abolitionist work, defunding police, things like transformative justice and restorative justice as well. So community-led solutions when it happens in our community. So it's not just sort of getting good behaviors and looking for role models, but also that sort of, well, what happens when it is somebody in our social circle or our scene that is, that dude or that person, that's doing things. What are the solutions that we could do that don't add to systemic racism and invest back in the structures that are, very harmful to people of color and First Nations people? Sorry, it's a bit long too.
No, thank you so much. And I'm very much looking forward to reading your book. When is it coming out?
Oh gosh, Neftalie, you know how hard it is to write a book. It's like, it was meant to be ready sometime, but because of just 2020 was a very unusual time for us, very stressful. We've been in lockdown this year as well. It will probably be ready in 2022. And, you know, we're talking to people like, you know, Skate Like a Girl. We're talking to people very much, you know, that are here. So I'm looking forward to talking to people in exposure. We talk to Girls Not a Four-Letter Word, like really historical ones, right up to, you know, what Skateism has been doing, you know, so really just all different types of you know, activists, nonprofits, you know, the established groups that, you know, have evolved over time with the community. So yeah, that's what we're focusing on, and it's happening now as well. So it's great.
Wow, that's amazing. I wanted to ask you about what potential do you see for initiatives like Pushing Against Racism, Oral Consent is rather, you know, you're the co-founder, to challenge harmful attitudes and behaviors in the skate community, and how can we move from awareness to action? What needs to be done? Okay,
so I think with the Consent is Read, it really is actually about awareness, and it's also knowing our boundaries and what we're capable of doing. So the main goal of Consent is Read is education. You know, we're not the police, we're not a rape watch campaign, even though I think those things are very, very useful within certain circles, sort of, you know, the notifying when somebody's problematic and people are in harm's way. We're not a rape crisis center because we're not trained to do that. And it's been put on the chat many times, we're not funded. So trying to be a sustainable kind of, I guess, hub where people that are doing the work, so sexual violence prevention and all that, where we can actually say, you know, look, skaters, have you thought about this? Or, you know, if you're running an event, have you thought about inviting these groups? There's a skate organization called Chub Rolls, and the founders of that are, you know, trained in sexual prevention work. So they've started a conversation, and Karlie, you know, has said that, you know, I can reach out. So something like Pushing Against Racism is really joining the dots as well, but who's doing this kind of work in the community, and how can we make that, when it relates to and intersects with something like consent, how can we just highlight that? So Consent is Read really focuses on highlighting change makers, looking at solutions-based case studies, looking at what people have tried, and again, really highlighting these cases out in the community, like Bears here with Cornerstone. There was, you know, something that needed to be done in their community, and, you know, they've got these great, you know, new organizations and events. If we know there's a group like Fro Skate or Melanin Girls and Pals doing something, we'll say, look, you know, here's a safe group to go and, you know, connect with and skate with. We might not sort of send them on King of the Road, you know, Thrasher Challenge or something. Like, you know, it's really sort of also just keeping in contact with the sort of, you know, groups that are doing the work and would support Consent is Read as well. So yeah, I mean, oh, you know, Jade's just mentioned something as well, and Jade is just amazing as well. So really reaching out to look at knowledge as well that's not based necessarily on, you know, Western knowledge. So looking at, you know, we know with First Nations that, you know, the colonization has only been here for, you know, so many years. There wasn't prisons, there wasn't jail, you know, justice was something that looked very different. So really sort of turning our, you know, views around, and a lot of the articles and ways that we've been trying to inform Consent is Read is from First Nation scholars in Australia, from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, you know, populations here about, you know, well, what kind of justice are they wanting, you know, because sovereignty was never ceded here. So yeah, really just looking at racism as something that is connected to things of justice, including consent, is, you know, really nice connection that we can make to keep skateboarding moving forward. And I just feel really lucky that everybody that I've met that's an audience or is on the panel has just been very supportive of something like what we're trying to do with Consent is Read. It's very, very important because it can be like a scary, lonely, risky place to be. So it's really important that we all sort of say, whether it's consent or racism, like, you know, I got your back, or, you know, yeah, you know, these are things that you can do to make what you're doing more sustainable, and yeah, you know, have self-care and all that other stuff as well.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you, so I wanted to talk about, well, racism towards Asians, because there has been a rise in hate crimes lately. I've seen both in Europe and in the States, saying, you know, after the Atlanta shootings. So how has it been in Australia? How are things there?
Yeah, I mean, the you know, something that Paul O'Connor, Dr. Paul O'Connor's here, and people from Pushing Borders are here, and they've been very generous, giving a space to sort of talk about, you know, hate towards Asian and COVID racism, and how can we actually think about what's happening, you know, to people like that look like me, and are, you know, read as Asian, and sort of get the skate community to, you know, think about that as well and show support. It's been very bad here. Like, I think we need to also just remind that in Australia, at least, there's a hierarchy of racism in a sense. It's not like, you know, we need oppression Olympics, but it's definitely the racism towards Asians shouldn't overshadow Black Lives Matter movement here. And definitely, you know, the deaths in custody towards Indigenous people is very, very shocking. So, you know, I think whatever anti-racism Asians do, hopefully that is supportive of and never overshadows Black Lives Matter here. And, you know, just as sort of examples of the, I guess, the hierarchies, you know, I've been spat at on the street, people have yelled out, you know, coronavirus at me. I was teaching and, you know, the door was open and some girls sort of yelled out, hey, coronavirus, in front of my students on my first day of teaching this trimester. And, you know, there's all these incidents, but they're spaced out. Like when I first grew up in Australia, it was every day, right? So racism sort of moves around a bit as well. Around September 11 here in Australia, you know, the racism was thrown at, you know, Muslim populations, you know, Black Africans that, you know, are settling here. All these sort of racism sort of move around. So it's important that we just, yeah, really be aware that it, as, you know, Neftalie said, that context is really important. But yeah, it's been pretty hard and I've been scared, you know, to, you know, like I said, you know, some things are very scary places to be, and anti-racism work is a scary thing to do sometimes because you are afraid that you're, you know, rocking the boat or everyone should shut up and skate and have fun. But it's like, no, actually I can't have fun if I'm too scared to walk on the street here. So something that Paul O'Connor and Claire from Two-Set have done, they're having a special issue out soon, and we're going to, I'm writing with Mitch Boingson. I hope I said his name correctly. He's a wonderful filmer from LA. We're working together on sort of talking about Asian skateboarders that just we get us stoked, and the Bruce Lee energy, right? So just sort of not sort of focusing on what not to do, but sort of what to do to make things more, you know, unified, to give each other solidarity and all those things. And one of those is, like Neftalie again was saying, you know, we're missing a lot of history here. Asians have always been a part of skateboarding, right? So it's just nice to sort of think, okay, I'm not going to be the lone person at the park. I know back in the 60s, Peggy Oki was skateboarding, or, you know, Jerry Hasu, or, you know, anybody that you can think of that's Asian that's been in skateboarding kind of thinks, okay, I actually belong in this space too. It's not like I'm a newcomer, you know. So it's, yeah, it's kind of the Asian racism is something that I found that people have been giving a lot of support and understanding, and something we can all learn from without sort of, you know, taking from each other. It's more like sharing, you know, our strategies, and it's not, you know, it's nothing that's feels like a burden in certain spaces. So definitely when I've talked to, you know, Bear and to, you know, Maria or Maz Mayasi from Melanin Gals and Pals, like it doesn't feel like a burden to talk about this. It feels like I'm safe to do this. So it's really great to have those conversations again with something like Pushing Against Racism that lets us all come together, you know, to sort of talk about our experiences, but also strategize.
Thank you so much, Indigo. Also, thank you. It's very late for you now, right? So really appreciate you joining us today.
It's 1:15. It's sort of, you know, it's cool. Past midnight.
Right. Perfect. Can we move on to Dior, because we need to wrap up in 15 minutes before the next session starts. So hello, Dior. Can I see you? You're here? Yeah, you're here. So you grew up in Navajo Nation, right? Oh, did she leave? No? I'm not sure if she can hear us. Until she can join us, I'll just ask a general question for anyone who would like to answer it. Basically, I wanted to ask, what are some practical tips an organization can do to start pushing against racism? What do you think we need to do?
Was that for all of us?
Yes. Yep.
I just want to think about having because this conversation is now started. I would just say to everyone, it really is a lot easier to have that within the skateboarding industry, and to make those changes both in who they hire, which Karlie had mentioned earlier, but even more so than in the skateboarding industry is also outside of that space. Because what happens here, like we'll have again like our internal struggles, fights, but we can also be able to affect all of those corporations, those businesses outside of us that want to be involved in skateboarding. So if they're not giving you the time of day at the skate shop or the skate or the industry in general, we can go and speak to them and really saying like, what is your business doing focused on that's focused on an anti-racist agenda? And more importantly, or not more importantly, but just as important to that is look at all of these young people who are in this space as well, so you can make those businesses better too. So it's just like this agenda, I talked about it in the interview I did, it's something that is not happening in other industries. So that to me just again shows like why skateboarding is special, is it's not happening in a real way. Like the conversation in the NFL is not the same conversation. It's just not, it's not organic. So Colin Kaepernick still does not have a job, right? So these are the things that's special about skateboarding. And I would just say that this initiative allows that to happen, and everyone should use it as a sort of a shield and weapon to go into any conversation anywhere, not just, the skateboarding companies, which of course you can do, but we can move even beyond that, of course, because this is really powerful. And anyone who doesn't want to be with you on it, it's fine. If they're not answering the calls, I tell this to people all the time, they're not going to answer your first 4 calls. If everybody gets on this note, they will not answer your first 4 calls. That's not how it works, because sometimes people forget that even in the industry, the industry itself is so small. It has money, but everyone in the industry, almost all of them started in the same space that you are. Just going, I see something, I want to do something different, I'm just going to do it. We now, because you need a historical perspective, like they did the same thing. Those businesses were in the same garage, they were in the same thing. So like, one, we can talk to them, reminding them of themselves and not see you as the other. Because it's like, hey, you did it then, this is what we did. But if they're not feeling you, sorry, I'll be correct. If they are not feeling you, then it's okay, because it's skateboarding. You have the space to do exactly what they did. So it's like, I just say like, bring the love first. And if they're not feeling you, it's totally fine, because they were you yesterday. They have just forgotten. But more important than that is everyone outside of skateboarding was never you. They were never you. And that's who we really go get, because that's who's actually running the networks. That's who's actually doing that. And you should really use that as a weapon. This is a pushing against racism, anti-racist agenda that is not everywhere else. And use that. So go get them. So
Wow, powerful. Thank you. Thanks so much, Neftalie. Dior, can you hear us now? Are you with us? No.
All right, are we good? Hello?
Yes, there you are. Hi.
All right, Yate, hello everyone.
Hello. I wanted to ask you a few questions. First of all, what kind of opportunities would you like to see for first-generation skaters?
The opportunity to produce skateboards, the opportunity to provide the youth with tools and the skills to make skateboarding. I mean, just the basic tools to make skateboards, and to even the skills needed to make skateboards are in like everyday life things. When you own a home or an apartment, something breaks, you know, if you're had that, you know, that exposure to power tools and how they work, you're not going to be so afraid to like want to build something or change something in your community, because you've been exposed to, you know, like a skill. And I didn't get that exposure with my mom. I got it with my grandparents, because they didn't want to buy everything, they wanted to build everything. So thankfully, like, I was around that type of, you know, childhood growing up. But I instantly, as I got older and I got into middle school and high school, I learned that like nobody knew how to work power tools, and nobody knew how to, you know, fix things aside from like me and my small family. So I want to make that opportunity way more vast for like First Nations communities, give them, you know, something that intrigues them, rather than just being like, oh, learn how to work a power tool. It's like, okay, come and learn how to use these power tools to make a skateboard that you can ride and, you know, use as a tool. So that's what I want to see. People that are building skate parks now on the reservations, I want to, you know, rather than them building just a skate park and leaving it there, I kind of want them to include like a little editing bay where, you know, the kids that don't skateboard but they would like to film and edit, they can, you know, sit there and film and edit, because they're included as well. It's not just the skateboarders that are skating, because skateboarders are going to need to make videos and edit videos anyway to get noticed. And, you know, Native Americans have been woodworking from whenever, you know, from the dawn of time. So it only makes sense for us to be making our own skateboards. There's plenty of skateboarders or skateboard companies that are Native owned, but, you know, it's almost slim to none to actually say these are Native made. So that's what I see for the future of like First Nations getting involved in skateboarding, is Native made skateboards, not just Native owned companies.
Thank you. So you grew up in Navajo Nation, right? So what are some challenges you might have faced in the past, or skaters generally facing there? Because, you know, there's not many skate shops or many skate parks, and it's such a vast area, right? So how is it being a skater there?
I mean, it's incredibly expensive. I mean, to go to, you know, a border city, a border town to get supplies as a little kid, you're asking your parents to drive 45 miles into town and then 45 miles back, you know, and that comes with gas money. And, it, you know, should anything happen to your tires or one thing to the next. So being a young skateboarder on the Navajo Nation is ridiculously hard right now. And, you know, there needs to definitely be like a distribution house locally that, you know, gets to all the border towns and gets to the smaller towns. But really there needs to be a local distribution house that is offering job opportunities. I mean, from silk screening to making skateboards to actually, you know, packaging skateboards and mailing them out. There's all those opportunities there in a small business that one distribution house could help with. And, you know, if something like that existed on the reservation, I could see, you know, skateboarding being a bit more accessible, because right now it's very inaccessible. You literally my nephew has to drive 35 to 45 miles into town to get to like a good skate park that, you know, has a skate shop right next to the side. And that's always slim to none that he gets to go out there, because he's living with his grandparents and they only go for like food supply runs. And, you know, when they go into town, it's for like very serious matter, you know. So it's really hard to become a skateboarder on the reservation. It takes like a different kind of perseverance to like want to keep skating when your board gets old, and want to keep skating when your shoes are torn beyond belief and no one's going to help you, you know, get newer things or get things in a faster manner.
Thank you. For those who don't know, Dior is making some incredible artwork from skateboards. So her Instagram is actually on the chat. So
thank you.
just letting, also that I can see at the back, are those yours? Did you make them? The skateboards?
Yeah, I do. Here, I can. Let's see, how did I change this?
This should, yeah, wow. That's amazing.
So this is a skateboard blank, what it looks like before anything gets cut. One that's cut and the designed ones.
They're gorgeous. Wow.
Yay.
They're amazing. Thank you for showing those.
Of course, I'm glad. I'm so honored to be here.
Also, I wanted to ask you, so because you're in Southern California now, right? So how was the change from, having grown up in Navajo Nation and then you moved to Southern California? That's right. How has that been? How was it changed?
Well, I work in Southern California, and the reason being for that is being in Southern California, you can literally work every day of the week. There's always opportunity here, so there's big wholesalers and retailers here that I'm able. So now that I own my business, my world dramatically changed because I can buy things at wholesale costs, and I can make my $100 go farther for my community than I ever have before. But it's kind of sad that I have to leave my reservation in order to find these opportunities out here, in a bigger city town. So it's I'm grateful, but at the same time, like, there's so much to get used to. And when you're born and raised with grandparents and your grandparents are still alive, for me, it's a 15-hour trek back home to drop off food and water. And I'm thankful for it, but I could see how when people leave the reservation that they don't feel like they need to go back right away because it's so far, and there's so much to get used to out here, and it's so different. I mean, there's asphalt everywhere, you can skate everywhere, you can, it makes me feel like I'm living in two worlds, really. So it's kind of hard.
For sure, I can only imagine. Thank you. I have one more question for you. Sorry.
Okay.
Please go.
Yeah. Oh, I seen someone's question. I am in the Santa Monica, Los Angeles area.
Thank you.
Okay.
So one more question before we wrap everything up, because we have another session in 30 minutes. What are some things that non-native skaters can do in order to help and support native skaters, and especially the younger generation?
Okay. I think one thing I came into a problem with competition skateboarding was not having the resources to travel abroad to skate other contests for like world skateboarding points. So I think if anyone really wanted to help like a native skateboarder that they see the talent in, and they see this person going somewhere, is maybe just to help get them to a contest and help them get to a skate contest, and help them enter, and help them get in the rankings as like a native skateboarder, or even just a skateboarder that is getting points for the first time ever. Because that's a big problem that happened for me is, when the opportunity came, I didn't have the funding or support to like go travel abroad and go see other parts of the world, and then come back and tell my community, this is what you have to do. So I think if non-skateboarders can also just non-native skateboarders or non-native supporters can just support by buying art, or support by just being an advocate and being like, no, I know a native skateboarder, this is their, you know, their social media. So I think just really getting native skateboarders out to skateboard events where they can start collecting points and being noticed, and, you know, having that opportunity to travel abroad for contests. And I think that would just be huge for any native. And it really, because it's going to be new, but now that skateboarding's in the Olympics, people are, you know, a bit more inclined to help out. And I'm thankful for that, because for the longest time, everyone always thought, you know, skateboarding was very silly, it's never going to go anywhere. And now that it's in the Olympics, I'm getting all these messages from people who were mean to me in high school and middle school. And, you know, they're like, wow, skateboarding's in the Olympics and you tried out for the USA skate team. So it's, skateboarding has changed the way people see it in my community. And I think with what I'm doing now with my skateboard art, people really want to see native skateboarders, First Nation skateboarders, you know, at their healthiest performance level, and, you know, the peak of a Native American skateboarding and health.
Thank you, really appreciate that. Guys, I wish
Thank you for having me.
With everyone like for hours. Unfortunately, we'll have to wrap this up because there's another panel, half hour, the queer and trans inclusion. So anyone who wishes to join that, you can register again and join that. But really, thank you all for joining. All the working group commitments, Sandy, Yash, Micaela, Rhianon, Neftalie, Karlie, Indy, Dior. I guess let's keep doing the work and let's keep talking to people about everything, and let's make a change.
Yes.
Thanks so much, everyone.